Hi, and welcome to AI for UX. This is a space where UX researchers and product leaders stay current with AI innovations. And I'm John Whalen, the founder of Brilliant Experience, and we're a psychology driven product innovation firm. I've struggled to keep up with AI tools for UX research, and I'm guessing not alone, and that's why we started the series. In each installment, we speak to a founder of one of the latest AI enhanced tools for a deep dive into its inspiration, how it could benefit you, and where the whole field is heading. And just a quick note, all these videos are not endorsements. Brilliant pays full price for all the technologies we use, and neither party is getting paid. This is just to learn more about new technologies together. Okay, with that, let's get started. So I would like to introduce Moodi. Welcome, Moodi.
Thanks, John.
So
Really pumped to be here with you today.
yeah, so Moodi is the co-founder and CEO of Next, and it's a tool that helps product teams validate day-to-day product decisions and big picture ideas with customer insights. So I'm really appreciate your time, and we're delighted to have you here too. And I think people are really interested in Next, so maybe we can get started there. I guess I wanted to know for the viewers, who's kind of the target audience for your product, and what kind of things is it addressing?
Sure, John. So Next is an AI-powered product discovery platform that turns customer interactions and conversations into product insights. And who says product insights means that it is built for the product organization. So the core users or application are people in the company who are making product decisions. Now, they don't necessarily have to have product in their title to be making product decisions. In startups or scale-ups, this could even go as high as the CEOs. Often founders are the core and essence of the product that their companies are building. So this is really the axis of the executive, the C-level who have product influence, all the way obviously to the CPO, who has product influence. This goes down to product managers, product owners, product marketing managers who are trying to articulate the value proposition of the product to the market, even down all the way to the engineering team who is building the product out, delivering it, the ops team that is writing the copy, creating the material, maintaining and delivering the product. So that's where that's the user community that we typically work with, because they're the ones who are in charge of defining what does the customer want, why do they want it, what aspirations do they have, how can we understand and crunch that data
Mm-hmm.
into meaningful ways in order to prioritize our work, and how do we fit that into our delivery funnel to get that product in their hands.
Cool. No, I mean, that's very comprehensive, and it's not always the case, and that's awesome. How do you help to make sure they're hearing the customer voice in all those cases?
Well, our thesis, John, in setting out Next was typically product organizations, when you think about product discovery or customer insights, you kind of really dive down and limit yourself to the UX research function, talking to a couple of people, crunching that data, and then trying to use that data to influence certain product decisions. UX research is under tremendous pressure just by the sheer
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
disequilibrium between the number of UX researchers and the number
Right.
of product people, right? So before
Mm-hmm.
starting the company, what we realized, me and my co-founder, we both come from product backgrounds. And what we've noticed is that for 2 decades, companies have heavily invested in product delivery. Product delivery now is a machine. We have tools like Jira, Linear, we have rituals like grooming, retros, and we do all this amazing work to pump out more code. And we are successfully pumping out a lot more code. But what is really struggling is that on the other side, meaning the part where we're supposed to define, well, who are we building for? What are we building for them? Why are we building it for them? Isn't as efficient. And especially the number of people in that side are totally lacking compared to the delivery
Yeah.
side. I think it was most recently Nielsen
Right.
research that I looked at that said the ratio of researcher to product people, so the researcher to designers to
Mm-hmm.
product people, was 1 to 5 to 50. I mean,
Right.
how is a one person supposed to influence product decisions made by 50 people whose processes and tooling are so optimized to be working so efficiently and so rapidly? It's just not realistic. So
Mm-hmm.
our thinking was, well, if that is the case, how can we kind of remix this and try to tackle the problem in a different way? So there was two core observations. First of all, the conversations, the interactions that a team is having with their customers isn't limited to UX and research. I mean, if you have a product in the market, you're selling it, you're supporting it, you're doing customer success, you're doing all sorts of other type of interaction. So our thinking was, hey, why don't we allow organizations to tap into all of their customer interactions, provide the capability and build tooling that can capture and understand those conversations, and then deliver insights into the product team to make strategic decisions, tactical decisions, prioritization decisions, implementation ticket decisions, all these other decisions that they need to do in order to make sure that they are building the right stuff for their customers.
Mm-hmm. No, it makes perfect sense. And yes, we'd love to have that ratio be different than 1 to 5 to 50 going forward. It keeps folks like our team busy as a result currently. Well, and I guess I wanted to ask, is there a typical scenario where, either a UX researcher or a product team person might dive in? Like what do they actually do in your tool?
Absolutely. I mean, so there are a couple, and I can outline a few, right? So, for example, on the product manager level, for example, I mean, as a product manager, your role is to understand, your primary role is to understand what the customer and the market wants and translate that into deliverables that the delivery team can consume and deliver on. So, very often it so happens that as a product manager, you're putting tickets or writing PRDs and putting them into the backlog, or for which you are, desperately seeking customer motivation. For me, having a delivery ticket that doesn't have customer motivation is like flipping a coin. Means we're building it, but we don't know why, we don't know what, we don't know how, and we may work out, and most often it doesn't, right? Research shows that 50% of what we produce is product waste, meaning great code delivered on time, on budget, but doesn't unlock customer value. So a PM would go into Next and they would say, hey, maybe what I'm working on is onboarding. You would say, hey, what is wrong with onboarding? What's happening? What are customers saying? What are the top 5, top 10 pains for onboarding? And the system would essentially crunch through across all of your customer conversations, and it will capture the relevant points where customers or prospects or other users expressed frustration or happiness with onboarding, and then it would generate a response for you based on that. And most importantly, it will augment its response with actual clippings from those conversations that the system used in order to generate the response. Essentially, it will back it up. It will evidence the response so that people have that. We have integrations obviously downstream to all these tools. So when you can essentially share this directly into Jira, and when that ticket gets picked up by an engineering team, well, they can actually watch clips of different customers talking about their experience with onboarding, what was broken, what they like, so that they can actually have a holistic, empathetic view of what the clients are aspiring to achieve, so that when they build it, they actually have good contact with that. But other use cases, John, go beyond that, all the way to the executive level, right? So we have use cases where CEOs, for example, are getting weekly Slack messages, direct DMs in Slack, where they're tracking, for example, the top 5 insights of the week across all the calls that happened inside the company. It's exactly the same model. The system will capture the data, crunch it, define what are the top 5, put them together, they ship them into Slack. So that the CEO can watch them directly in Slack and then action them and talk about them or prioritize them in their decision-making process. You can think about the same in product marketing, right? I mean, the best way to market a product is to use the user's voice in expressing what the product does. I will never forget, people have often outlined to me that one of the best product messaging has been for iPod. When the iPod came out, it was not some techno mumbo jumbo about what it does. It was 1,000 songs in my pocket. That's user talk. Right? So we need more user talk in the way we bring technology to market. So hearing the user say it, what is better than that? It doesn't get better than that. I can actually, as a marketing function, hear users talk about a value proposition or what we do or what they like about our product, and then use that vocabulary, use that tone of voice in articulating the marketing messaging. So the use cases are quite varied, but always rooted in this concept of tapping all the conversations you have, making sense of them, and then based on the use cases, deliver insights across your organization so that everything that you do is rooted in your customer insights.
Yeah, thank you for that. We had a couple wins where literally the product team actually reorganized their suite of products and used the names the users were calling them just in plain English,
Yes.
rather than their marketing speak, and it became greatly successful, and it was so nice to see that direct translation. So, now I think it's important for people to understand. We call this AI for UX, and so just talking about how AI is integrated into your tool, and it's almost like at the heart, if I've got it right. But your example of the CEO weekly message. So historically, I would be busy tagging things, or someone in my team would be, and then we collect those, and then we save them, and then we share it on an email. So how is this different from that? Just to be clear.
Absolutely. So there's a lot of genius in the way we have tried to leverage and put the product together. First and foremost, maybe about the AI aspect of it. I think a lot of things we are trying to do just wouldn't have been possible without AI. So it's not like we used to have a tool and now AI is there and we're sprinkling some AI, fanciness on
Mm-hmm.
top, or
Yeah.
trying to bake it in some way that is difficult. And I have found that companies struggle to bake AI into their offerings because the technology is just so transformational then that you need to transform your product. And the level of transformation is just so high that essentially means you need to go back to a white sheet of paper. And that's very difficult for companies to do. So we were AI born. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're doing wouldn't have been possible, as I mentioned before. And what AI does is it offers tremendous capabilities, especially when it comes to unstructured qualitative data. So AI is, well, let's be specific, large language models. By definition, they are language models, i.e. text-based, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unstructured qualitative data is text-based. And there you see the real magic that can happen by bringing the two together. Now
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about tagging because it's one of my favorite topics, right? And I
Yeah.
know it's a favorite topic of the research community as well, right? Because hey, we think of ourselves as librarians that we have to organize the data and coordinate the data and get it together so that other people can consume it in a meaningful way. Well, we got news, right? AI, John, knows that baby blue and navy are both blue. It just knows it. You don't need to tell it. You don't need to create tag hierarchies. You don't need to do any of that, which is why in Next, you don't need to tag anything. There is no tagging. People actually
Mm-hmm.
rarely touch the data, John, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
Meaning, these calls are coming in. Nobody's
Yeah.
touching these calls. Nobody's going in there, selecting stuff, tagging them, describing. They're not doing this kind of stuff. And this would have been totally unrealistic anyways,
Mm-hmm.
given the volume of calls we are talking about. You can do this kind of approach when you have 2 calls, 5 calls a week, 10 calls a month. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But what if you're having 2,000 calls a month? How are we going to do that? Who's going to tag it? Who's going to go in there and look at them?
Right.
Salespeople? You think they're going to go in and tag their calls? No way, right? CS people? No way, right? Nobody's going to do it. So we had to kind of
Mm-hmm.
find alternative ways. So the way it works is that the data comes in, nobody's touching it. If you want to, you can, but nobody has to. The system automatically, so first thing we do is we identify the language, transcribe it, we do speaker ID. For customers who need PII redaction, we do all that kind of stuff, right? We take out all the personally identifiable information. And then essentially we convert the video into text with the timestamping, meaning we know every moment in the text corresponds to what moment in the video. We identify the key customer moments, and for all of those, we clip the video that corresponds to it, and then we write a description for it. These are what we call those key customer highlights. And then what essentially happens is that they go into like a massive database, not to get technical. And then when somebody queries it, or so if you have a prompt, for example, set up for it, meaning the CEO update, for example, that system would on a weekly basis look at all the data and say, hey, this week, what key customer moments have I found? It will pick out the most relevant ones, put them together, generate a response, meaning a write-up on top of it, and then put the videos together in the form of a reel, think Instagram, and ship that into the CEO's Slack channel, right? So
Mm-hmm.
this is really what it's
Yep.
working. Totally frictionless, nobody touching the data, because at the volume of work and the
Mm-hmm.
volume of data that we have, it's just not possible, right? You have all these incoming
Yep.
calls and all these decisions being made. If somebody needed to be there in the middle, like the phone operator from the 50s, can you imagine how many phone operators we need? And I also sometimes feel that UX researchers were the phone operators of the 50s in just modern product teams. but it just doesn't scale. It doesn't work. We can't do that. And I think that what we've seen is that progressive UX research functions are really becoming data coordinators, putting in the guardrails, putting in the logic, putting in the mechanics of how do we translate this data flow into insights in a meaningful way, rather than focusing on, oh, let me do it because I am the only one who can do it, right? And I think that's where we're seeing a shift towards a tremendously scalable UX function in organization that is now powered by AI, but guardrailed, if you wish, by the UX function.
No, and really, you anticipated my question about how I might work differently, and that was a very eloquent way to say it. And it is a real mind shift for us to be the data flow coordinators. I did want to ask. There are things in other systems like hallucinations or bias that people are concerned about. My understanding is that yours is more of a closed box, like basically whatever we heard in those interviews or in different collections that you've got, that's what's coming out. Maybe you can just mention briefly how your system makes sure that nothing like that happens.
It's a great question, John. I must admit, the first time that I used ChatGPT myself, and I'm sure a lot of the people listening to this podcast have used it themselves as well. One of the big questions I asked myself, short of shorten this email for me or write, translate it or whatever, these mundane actions to which I actually know what the response is going to be. When I asked the question to which I did not know the answer, the first thing I asked myself after getting the answer, John, was, where is this coming from? Is this coming from TikTok videos? Is this coming from a PhD document? Is it coming from Wikipedia? Where is it coming from? Because without source, I don't even trust, that kind of stuff, let alone committing engineering resources to, some stuff that some system is throwing out based on, what hypothetically our customers want. So one of the big design principles, John, up next, was to tackle that issue, which is why the way we built the application is that you will never see a response in Next without actual customer clippings that the system used in order to generate that response. The evidence, I argue, John, is often more important than the response itself, right? Because that's what people are making a decision on. And the way we really think about it is we want to make sure that we transparently provide all the information product team people need in order to not only make decisions, but also apply critical thinking, right? So we want to make sure that people understand, for example, that if a response is generated on the back of a single interview, that we show it to you, that this is only based on one interview. Because that, as a product manager, you can then think to yourself, okay, well, in the level of speed or priority that I have, and what is expected of our organization from a strategic perspective, do I take the risk to push this to production, to delivery on the back of one interview, or do I need to go do and talk to more people? Yep. So these are decisions that AI isn't going to make for you. This is, you have to make those. But our job is to bring all of that data, all the metadata, all the guardrail data, so that you actually can make these decisions in a meaningful and impactful way for the organization, where you are applying your resources to tackle the right issues that matter to your customer, but also the strategy of the company.
Yeah, and thank you. And that's a great segue, because I think we really should show people what you're talking about and how they can make decisions. And also, as in some ways, the UX folks, researchers, were in some ways historically a little bit of a gateway because it was hard to get at the raw data. So interesting to see how everyone at the company can access it here, and how you think about. You mentioned sort of framing research in the right way for folks that might not be familiar with it, or so how that data flow design might work as you show us this. So because I think one of the things that's slightly different in my mind for Next is this notion of highlights versus just having clips versus that the entire video sample, and so corpus. So I'll see if I can share your screen, and if you could just take a few moments to think back to that scenario of whether it's that product owner or UX researcher and how they'd they'd go about using next. Okay, here, let's see what I can do. Okay, so I think we're sharing your screen right now.
Absolutely. So here we go in Next. So Next essentially is you have two big components in Next. You have your threads, which is where you are essentially getting information out of the system or interacting with the system to create what you want it to do, and your library, which is where all your data resides, right? John, it so happens that some of the use cases that we just talked about are smack on the page right here, right? So on Index, you can either prompt the system based on information that you want, so you can create your own threads, may that be on the entire database, or by creating a focus, meaning I can interrogate, if you want, the data based on data or conversations coming in from customers in a certain industry in a certain time frame. So I can segment and isolate the data according to my needs, or I can have standing prompts, right? So which you see here. So essentially, these are things that I regularly do. So instead of just typing them every time, I can essentially program them into the software so that I can get the data at the click of a button. When it comes to prompts, John, it's really interesting to point out that essentially our use of AI is not only in terms of surfacing insights, but also to create deliverables. Meaning, how cool is it that not only can I say, hey, based on, tell me what happened in my research last week, but that I can actually say, based on my research last week, please write the first version of my PRD for me. And it will do that. Right. So the idea really is also to help the product people who are consuming data and then producing stuff with that data in the production, in their use of the data that we are delivering. So we're kind of like even going further than just providing insights. We're even going to say, well, now that I'm giving you the insights, let me also help you use the insights to produce what you want to produce with it. Very often, this could be, PRDs, this could be user personas, this could be artifacts and other material that you create as part of your work. But let's just get into it, right? So here, for example, one of the use cases I think we talked about, John, was the weekly CEO update, right? Imagine that I'm the CEO of a company. My company, I don't know, we are, a Series A company, 50 people, 60 people. We are talking to lots of customers who have bought our product in customer success. We are selling to a lot of them, and that's all of our sales function. And then we may have, in product, some of our PMs that are talking to customers. We may have researchers who are talking to customers. There's a whole lot of customer conversation happening up. Mm-hmm. I can come here and essentially you see it's a CEO weekly update. Clicking this, it will essentially send the prompt in. And then on the right-hand side, John, you see what I was talking about, focus. You see that the system essentially says, hey, for this prompt, the focus obviously has to be the data from last week because it's a weekly update. There's no point running this prompt on the data from last year because that's not what we're looking for. So the system would actually create the focus for you, and then start generating the response. So you see here, it generated the response, John. So weekly customer feedback, boom, 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 couple of bullet points, and then it actually augments it, John, with actual clippings from customer conversations that you can use in order to get a sense of what is going on. So this is actually a video. I can watch this. This is a 30-second clipping from a call this week somewhere in my company where the customer said something really interesting that relates to these bullet points that were created here. And yeah, this is the essence of Next, John. This is where we come into bringing the data together in very meaningful ways. One thing, John, I also wanted to point out was maybe another use case where you may, for example, want to capture a snapshot from your customer feedback this week. Exactly the same logic, right? I would come here and say, hey, give me the key bullet points about what happened this week, or a snapshot of what were the key pain points, or what were the good things or bad things that happened in our customer base. You see the system will go on and generate a response for me. And at the tail end, it will do exactly like we did in the CEO update. It will essentially augment its response with actual clippings of customer conversations that the system is offering. Teams at this point, John, can do two things. Either I'm happy with this, right? Meaning I'm satisfied with the response, and I'm ready to take it forward, or I can go back and forth with it. I can say, hey, no, I actually want to maybe, I don't know, dig deeper into the prioritization concerns, right? And I can, chat with this data back and forth, digging deeper, exploring different angles of the data so that I really get to the bottom of what I want. And at some point, John, when I am happy with the response that I have, I can then share it out. You see, we offer integrations. So here, for example, I have the integration to Slack activated, but we integrate into Linear, into Jira, into Figma, into Slack, into Jira Product Discovery, Product Board, all these tools that the product function essentially uses, but also beyond, right? We can integrate into HubSpot, into Salesforce, into all sorts of different places where you can take the data. And what the system produces, John, is essentially what we call a story. It's the story of the thing you were looking for. If you were a PM, this is the story of your ticket. So it essentially stitches together the clippings that it found that were relevant into a single video that now you can consume as you push this thing forward to wherever it needs to go, and the data flows directly into the right places. Alternatively, you could dig into the data, John. Right? So I'm here. I can say, "Hey, show me more," and I can dig into the data. Did you notice that we switched from threads to library? So now I'm essentially inside my data. You see that in my library, I have my original recordings and all the highlights from those recordings. So you see, these are the 3 highlights that the system had identified. I can click right through all the way to the original recording, which is where the recording came in. We did all the conversational intelligence work that we do in order to capture the key customer moments of the call. And this is essentially all the way to the raw data, right? That's where I am at this point, where we bring everything together. Now, one of the really cool things we're also doing now, John, is we're actually going to augment. We actually released that today, which is really exciting. Is that we're going to actually augment these recordings and data and highlights with your business context. So imagine, John, a world where I can bring, accounts data from Salesforce or HubSpot into Next. Who are my accounts? What stage are they in? How much ARR are we doing with them? What industry are they in? What region are they in? And when you get a chat response or a thread response, you can actually say, hey, based on these key customer pain points, how much ARR is associated to this? Or in which region do we have this problem? And that will essentially take the whole system to an entirely new level.
Interesting. No. I if I remember right, you could put in some custom context in general, but it sounds like this is quite different, where you're linking it to, like in the example you gave, the value for your customers. And so, how are you seeing folks? I guess it sounds like it's designed for pretty much everything to come in, like customer calls, UX research, sales calls. I guess I was just wondering how usage has evolved. Is there anything that surprised you about how your clients are using this right now?
Lots of surprises, John, every single day. I must admit, this is the first. So this is my, Next is my 3rd venture that I've built in my life, and this is the first time, John, that I am not even sure what features we have in the product. And that's a really funny story. So a couple of weeks ago, I got a call from one of our customers who lives in Switzerland. In Switzerland, for people who are listening, they speak lots of languages, right? You speak German, French, Swiss German, lots of different fun stuff. And so this customer of ours was doing, a lot of customer conversations in Switzerland, and of course in all the different languages, right? None of it in English, actually. And he just happened to be using Next in English, meaning he would come here, and for example, if you were to create your own prompt, he would be prompting the system in English, meaning he would put in stuff like, I don't know, tell me about key customer moments, etc., in English. And the system obviously would generate responses in English and augment them with this customer clippings. Only to realize, John, a couple of weeks after his usage, that none of the underlying data is in English.
Right.
So essentially, Next is consuming data in all sorts of languages, understanding them, contextualizing them, flipping them, summarizing them. And then when you write a response, it takes data in multiple languages, puts them together, and seamlessly gives you back a response in English, even if none of the underlying data is in English. And that is amazing because, John, you know what? The #1 feature request for us on the recording page, can we have a tab where I can ask the system to translate this recording into another language? Right? What a crappy solution to a problem that AI solves natively, seamlessly, without even worrying about it. Don't worry about it. Forget it. right? And I think these are some of the use cases that we are starting to see emerge that literally like are changing the craft of how product discovery is done in companies. Labeling is a very similar case.
Mm-hmm.
AI just seamlessly solves it. We don't need it, right? And there are numerous examples of this kind of transformation that is happening. Some of it we are aware of, most of it we're unaware of, and we will discover as our customers take the product to market, use it, and do amazing things with it.
And just really interesting, a great example of a story of the variety of usage. I did want to ask you. You've got highlights and clusters, and I just wanted to see if could you just tell me a little bit about the difference between those?
Yeah, so essentially clusters are themes if you think about them, right? So they are bigger groupings of the data that you may have inside your organizations. We actually have magic plans for clusters. Hopefully in a couple of weeks we'll be announcing this stuff. But the idea really around clusters is to create a meaningful connection or intermediary step between the really nitty-gritty details, which are the
Mm-hmm.
highlights, and the really high-level data, which are your recordings, right? So that we have a mechanism to bring those together and then start hopefully showing emerging
Mm-hmm.
trends and data and information that is coming in without users having to go through the prompting of the application in an active way.
One of the things, kind of ironically, that I found interesting in you showing us some of the product is, you know, historically, I think of, well, how do you set it all up? How do you configure it all? How do you da? And essentially, you're just saying just go, in that it's doing automatic tagging, and you're not doing a global taxonomy and helping to say here's the clusters of data. You're saying take everything and see what's relevant. It's really interesting. It's a makes total sense on the scale you're capable of. Well, is there? I think we're all done. Was there anything else you wanted to show us? Totally fine if there isn't. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't cutting you off.
No, look, I just wanted to, I guess the
Yeah,
idea was to give a glimpse of the product and what
it
it does, and
is.
I think we hopefully accomplished that.
I agree. Well, cool. And I did want to ask a little bit about when you started this. My impression is that you were one of the groups that really, was very found into the sort of early foundational generative AI work and got connected to a lot of groups. And so maybe you can just tell me, a little bit of like you did mention how you got inspired to do this as a product builder yourself. But how did you get connected into this, this hugely different approach to working with this data?
I mean, look, I think there was, a couple of, life is full of coincidences and moments of serendipity. We try to make things as linear and thoughtful as possible, but we can't get away from the serendipity. So through our past experiences, we had made our way to being part of the Microsoft Scale Up program, and obviously Microsoft being one of the partners of OpenAI, through that relationship, we had access to understand what they were cooking. We saw and were made aware of some of the early advances that they were making in their LLMs and the capabilities that they had, and we had tried many things in order to try to in our really quest to find a way to use AI and machine learning in crunching unstructured qualitative data. I mean, that just
Mm-hmm.
made so much sense to us, but just the advances of technology we felt weren't there. And it
Mm.
wasn't until, mid 2022, I would say, that we kind of started having a really good feel about, yes, this is going to be possible. Meaning that we are at one in a 0 to 1. We are not at a point where this is just still so wacky that it's not possible to put it into production, that people can't really use it in a real environment. But of course, it may also have some shortcomings that we need to somehow tackle and so on. So that's how we kind of got into going with building an AI product, and that's why I say it was AI born, because a lot of the things that we are trying to do just wasn't possible before. And if you take AI out of Next, there is pretty much no Next left. I mean, you saw the simplicity of the product. You connect the calls, you don't have to worry about it. then you just query it, or the system just shows you some trends and data so that you're aware of the customer insights. I mean, this is the simplicity of the product. This is why we are so product-led in our approach, where people can just sign up, try it out, and get value really quickly, and then scale it in their teams very fast, rather than being very heavy-handed on the implementation or customer success work. We don't do any of that kind of stuff because the technology is carrying so much of the deliverables in the experience that we want to deliver to customers. So that's how we kind of got acquainted into wanting to build this this product and this company in the way that we envision it to do. And I must admit, John, I think what I've observed is that a lot of the work, and you said, "Hey, Moodi, it's so simple that it's almost like sign up and go." I completely agree with you. And what I see is that a lot of the work in getting even better performance has moved from before I get value to after I get value. And that's really exciting. What do I mean by that? Instead of you signing up for a product, having to do implementation for 6 months before you get any value, you can essentially sign up for Next and get value right now. And then what we offer you is to get even more value. So think about, for example, capabilities such as custom instructions that we offer in the software. So you can actually go and augment the prompts that are in the software by telling the software, well, maybe I am an engineering and construction company. We operate in these countries. We build these kinds of houses or buildings or infrastructure. This is the kind of calls we have. This is the kind of data we're looking for. You can actually give these extra context to the system so that it does even a better job than what it does out of the box. And I think that's very exciting because essentially you're kind of opening up the horizon of possibilities for organization to fine tune and refine and augment and get better performance and accuracy out of the system rather than what comes out of the box. But out of the box, if you're already getting 95%, that's pretty good already.
Yeah. No, I was thinking about that. Some of our clients have, the biologists talking about RNA sequencing and all the tech that goes with that, or mergers and acquisitions lawyers having reverse triangular merger, very specific unusual language. And so no, I think that makes a lot of sense. Well, I need to get you thinking to the future, and maybe you've got this. It sounds like there are new things on the pipeline that are coming soon, but I guess I had a question here that said, where do you see your product in the next few years? And I think honestly, it's like, who knows? But maybe you can tell me a little bit about both how you see Next evolving, and also a little bit about how you just see how we do research. And I historically have said UX research, but really it sounds like this is for really the entire organization. So how do you see your product and this whole notion of being better informed for your product evolution? How will that change over time?
John, I think it's the whole experience of building Next has been tremendously humbling for me and the entire team at Next. In a world where you don't even know some of the features that exist in your product today, it's very difficult to, be in a position to say, I actually know what's going to happen in 6 months from now, right? But there are, to your question, a couple of principles, I guess, that we are trying to follow. I think one of the first principles, which is directly derived from being humble, is get out of the way of technology, right? Meaning there is a philosophy where you could build more and more features into your product. A great example would be to build a feature that allows you to translate calls of your customers into other languages if you're a multinational working across the globe. That's more features, right? But that's suffocating the technology. Because as we realize, the technology can do it totally seamlessly without you even having to do anything. So I think one of the things for us, one of the principles is don't get in the way of the technology, because AI is going to accelerate the intelligence that it produces is going to be accelerate at a pace we can't even understand today. So that's, I think, element number one. On the second stage, I think one of the things we're trying to do is, look, all these customer conversations that we are tapping across the entire org has to be put in the context of the company. In other words, we need to wire it up, right? Using your context, your data, the way you think about your business and your organization. A lot of this data and context is already in your existing systems. as I pointed out, for example, overlaying client information on top of Next by tapping metadata in Salesforce so that you can have ARR data relating to a pain point that Next delivers from you in your calls from last week. It's super cool. So we're wiring up. That's going to be one of the areas we're going to focus is how do we wire up this data more and more so that we connect more and more dots in the organization for you around this, helping you build better products in more meaningful ways, more strategically, more impactful for your goals. And I think then lastly, it's going to be around the possibilities of what we can deliver. This goes into the direction, John, of multimodal AI models and these kinds of things coming out, right? So today, we produce, text and we augment it with video elements and all these kinds of things. But imagine a world where, we could actually output entire user journeys, right? Take my research from last week and produce a user journey for me. And then plot this on Miro for me, please, right? I mean, so I think we're just scratching the surface of what the output power of Next is going to be, of AI is going to be. And in that perspective, what we want to make sure is that we have a great capability to take your calls and conversations coming in, break them down in meaningful ways, and then use AI to produce all these amazing outputs. May those be insights or artifacts that you need in order to build fantastic products that your customers will love.
No, really, it's a real mind shift for us UX researchers, where we're like, we'll package all the data up carefully for you and share little insights with you, and so it changes our role pretty dramatically. Well, and just so folks know, if they wanted to give your tool a try, how do they get started? Would it just be on the Next website, or anything else you want to mention there?
Yeah, so John, we're at nextapp.co. It would be wonderful. We'll actually, maybe link it in the comments out to the video below. We have a free tier. People can go free forever. You can use the software, upload your content, do everything that I talked about there. No limitations in features. We give you the best premium models. Everything is at your fingertips. The only thing that it caps on is the amount of data that you could put in. But you can get a real sense of what the application can do for you. And that would probably be the best way to get started. Obviously, we're here to help in the product. You have lots of call to actions where you can reach out to our team. Our customer success people are here to inspire you with use cases that our other customers have created. And to augment all of this, one of the things that we did launch a little bit earlier this year was a creator marketplace. So we essentially have teamed up with influencers, coaches, consultants, and people who are bearing the product discovery flag in product teams every single day, to partner with them and bring in their methodologies, their rituals in the form of prompts that companies can adopt in order to make product discovery a bigger part of their work. So when you sign up, you can access these prompts, or directly on the website, you can go to nextapp.co/creators, and you will see the creators that we have in the marketplace, and then use some of their prompts in order to get going. We're adding creators now at a weekly basis. And hopefully that can serve as an accelerator and inspiration for product teams who are wanting to bring more product discovery into the way they work.
Well, very cool. And I encourage folks to just even just follow along with Moodi. You've got a really interesting background, and it's an interesting trajectory you and your company are on. So we wish you every success. And so really, thank you. That's everything I want to do. So I really appreciate your time and expertise and enthusiasm for both the direction this is all going and Next. So thank you. Thank
you, John, for having me, and thank you for doing this series.
Sure. Well, and I think I'll stop it there. So thanks everyone for watching today and for tuning in to the latest on AI for UX research. And subscribe if you enjoyed this, and let me know in the comments what you'd like to see us feature next. And wishing you all brilliant insights with AI.